everyone, and welcome back to my lovely kitchen. Today we are going to be making focaccia bread. So today's recipe is a straightforward one. It requires simple pantry ingredients, no special equipment, and practically no baking skills. Yet you are going to be rewarded with a soft and chewy focaccia bread with a crispy crust. So now let's get straight into the recipe. The first thing I like to do is to proof my yeast, and to do that I'm going to be adding my yeast inside some warm water. I'll also be adding 2 teaspoons of honey. This honey is what the yeast is going to feed on, and it's going to activate it so it can bloom. Now, if you don't have honey or you don't want to use it, feel free to use sugar. It's all well and good. Now give this a good mix and set it aside for about 5 minutes to bloom. The next thing I like to do is to measure out my flour, and to do this I like to first whisk it, introducing a lot of air inside the flour so that when I'm measuring it out, the result is going to be accurate. So to measure out the flour, just scoop out some and use a surface with a flat edge to scrape down the excess flour. In that way, you are going to be able to get an accurate result when using a measuring cup for your flour. In goes my salt. Give that a good mix so that everything can be well combined. And I'll also be adding my olive oil. Now back to the yeast. As you can see, my yeast is looking nicely proofed. If your yeast is looking nothing like this, I will suggest you spill it and start all over again so as not to ruin the recipe. So now just pour the yeast mixture inside the flour and whisk everything together until it's almost combined, or till you start getting a little bit of resistance while mixing with your whisk. At this point, just remove the whisk and remove the excess dough stuck inside the whisk. Then use your hands to mix until everything is well combined. Now we are not kneading this, we are just mixing until everything is well incorporated. If you look closely at the texture of this dough, you can see that it's really looking wet and shaggy, and it's not looking attractive. But don't worry, everything is going to be fine. At this point, I'm going to just cover this up and leave the dough to rest for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, if you stretch the dough, you are going to see a lot of difference. It's now looking way better than before. So now I'm just going to mix it one more time to make sure everything is well mixed. And like I said earlier, I am not kneading, I'm just mixing. So this is going to take less than 30 seconds. Honestly, there's no big deal here. You just mix until everything is well combined. And once you are done, we are going to be transferring the dough inside our pan. But before I do that, I like to put some olive oil inside the pan. So now take the dough and roll it around so that it can be well coated inside the olive oil. I will actually say drenched at this point. As you can see, it's a lot of olive oil going on here. So once that is done, just use your fingers to spread the dough all around the pan. And by the way, I'm using a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. Once the dough is well spread inside the baking pan, I'm going to cover this with a plastic wrap, and I'm going to be leaving this to proof for about 1 hour in a warm place. So while the dough is proofing, I'm going to be mincing my garlic. I'm going to be adding some oil inside my pan, and I'm going to be adding the minced garlic as well. I want the flavor of the garlic to be well infused inside the oil. And by the way, I'm doing this on a low heat, so this is going to stay for about 3 to 5 minutes, stirring every now and then so that everything is going to be cooked evenly. When the garlic is beginning to brown but not burnt, I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to add my rosemary. And I'll mix it in so that the rosemary flavor can also be well infused inside the oil. It's been 1 hour now and our bread dough is well risen. As you can see, it's looking so good. So the next thing is to make our dimple inside our dough, and this is one of my favorite parts. So what I'm going to do is to dip my hand inside some water Then I'm going to poke my fingers way deep down inside the dough while being careful not to deflate the whole dough. So you need to be systematic while doing this so that you don't end up deflating the whole dough. Once you've done putting your dimple as much as you want, it's now time to add our infused oil. I'm going to spread that all over the surface of the dough. So I want you to know that when you are baking this garlic bread using this infused oil, the garlic is going to burn. So if you are not okay with that, feel free to sift off the garlic from the oil before spreading that all over the bread. But I really don't care, so I leave it this way so that I'm going to get all the flavors from the garlic as much as I can. And once the bread is done, I just dust off the burnt garlic off my bread and I enjoy my food. So this is totally up to you. Whatever you want to do is fine. I'll now be leaving this to rest for another 5 minutes before taking it into my oven. So it's now time to take this inside our 425 degrees Fahrenheit preheated oven, and I'm going to be baking this for about 25 to 30 minutes till the crust becomes golden brown and crispy. So now our bread is done. As you can see, it's looking so good. But I like to remove this immediately from the pan once it's done, and this is going to prevent the bread from steaming up right inside your pan, because this steam might ruin the crust of the bread and you don't want that. This recipe is a very versatile one. As you can see, today I used garlic and rosemary for my topping, but feel free to use any other topping of your choice. You can even go the extra mile to use your pizza topping. It's all well and good. It's that versatile. So feel free to be as creative as you want to be. So that is it. This is how I make my no-knead easy focaccia bread in about 2 hours, and the result is outstanding. You are going to be surprised that a recipe this simple can yield an amazing result. So you can serve this with your olive oil and salt like I'm doing today, or you can serve it with your soups and stews. It's totally up to you. You can even make it into sandwiches if you want to. So that is it again for today. As usual, all the details you need for today's recipe can be found in the description box below. Until next time, I'm going to talk to you shortly. Enjoy.